And from Church World Services, and I'd like to ask unanimous consent that be entered into the hearing record.
Objection?
Thank you. Mr. Morgan, it's clear that we are confronted with a significant problem on the southern border, and the challenges are wide-ranging and require, I think, significant coordination from a number of federal agencies coming together, and that means also federal, state, and local. Truly a whole-of-government approach is necessary to confront this. So could you describe how CBP is coordinating with other DHS components, including USCIS, ICE, and CBP, as well as HHS and ORR?
Yes, sir. So the coordination specifically with USCIS and ICE, that's really done on a daily basis. For example, we talked about the interdependencies that we have specifically with respect to ICE. One of the largest challenges we have right now is single adults. Again, ICE does not have adequate bed space, and so it's a constant struggle with the number of apprehensions we have to be able to ensure and get them out of our custody as fast as possible to ICE. So we're coordinating with ICE on a daily basis with respect to how we can expeditiously get those single adults out of our custody into ICE. USCIS, obviously, we work with them on a daily basis. They are the asylum officers. They are the ones that actually determine and adjudicate someone's credible fear claim as they go through the process. They're in our stations. We're working with them constantly. DHS, again, this is not just a CBP issue. This is not just an ICE issue. It really is a DHS issue. It's even outside of DHS. Right now, we have hundreds of volunteers from across DHS that have been deployed to the southwest border to help us specifically with the humanitarian crisis.
So you talk about daily coordination, but is there an interagency group in a formalized way that is actually coordinating this on a regular basis, or is this ad hoc as you're just talking to other agencies?
No, it's both. So we both have working groups at the local level, each field. So each field has their own entity that they work, whether it's El Paso, RGV, with those entities. And then at DHS, there's also a working group that's led by DHS that has a lot of different subgroups and subcommittees. But we're doing it on a formal basis.
Because that's important. I mean, when we're trying to think about how we coordinate all these activities, which is going to require, I'm always frustrated as to knowing who's actually in charge, who's actually responsible for making sure all of these pieces are working together, and I never seem to get a real good answer about that. That has me concerned. And I guess, you know, that leads to the question, is anyone at the White House facilitating the coordination of these activities?
They're absolutely involved in every aspect of this
Who's doing that
crisis.
at the White House?
Different entities. It depends on what lane it is.
So different entities are coordinating. Is there one entity that's really responsible for coordinating all this?
Well, I would say it depends, sir, on what element you're talking about with respect to the certain conditions you're talking about. I mean, we could talk about media. That could be held by a different individual. If you're talking about what we can do within the current legal framework to stem the flow of migration, then we would be talking to different people within the White House.
Is there someone who's in charge of coordinating state and local governments as well as NGOs, which are a critical component of all this?
Yes, sir. DHS has a state and local partner coordinator. Yes, sir.
And so that person's in charge that we could ask, how is that coordination going?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Morgan, the FY19 appropriations bill has included $128 million for CBP to contract with medical professionals. And a recent emergency supplemental included roughly $112 million for medical care and consumables. Given the number of children who are arriving at our southern border, how much of the FY19 and supplemental funding has been spent on pediatric medical professionals?
So on specific pediatric care, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we are looking at $63 million for continued and additional medical assets and high-risk support across the southwest border. That was contained in the supplemental moving forward.
But we want to know how it's being spent, how many folks are involved. I mean, part of our oversight function here is to understand exactly how that money is being spent. It's the intent of Congress to make sure we're providing medical services to those folks who need it. And we are accountable to the taxpayers for that money and how it's spent. So I'd certainly like to do a deeper dive with you to have a better sense of that.
And I have that data. I'll be able to provide that, sir.
and where these professionals are being sent, any shortfalls, challenges, all of that is going to be important for us to do our work.
We have all that data, sir.
Thank you. So while the recent management alert is certainly the main discussion point for us today, it is my understanding that this alert, Ms. Costello, is part of a much larger oversight effort that's related to the CBP and ICE detention facilities. I think it's important for this committee to hear you describe what other reviews are currently in progress, and more importantly, when do you expect those reports to actually be released?
Senator, we have a lot in this space. Following on the management alerts, I think in my written testimony, you may have seen this is part of a larger series of unannounced inspections that we did all along the southern border. So these two alerts were issued because of the serious nature of what we found, but we will be issuing a capping report this fall to identify the findings in all the facilities. We're also looking at, since you were asking Mr. Morgan about it, how we're going to audit how that aid is being spent. Not all of it, but the consumables, the medical access, things of that nature. We are looking at asylum seekers at the southern border, separating families at ports of entry, whether or not families were given the opportunity to be removed with their children, things of that nature. We're looking at the underlying causes of the prolonged detention. So why 72? Why are we going beyond the 72 hours? And between HHS and ICE and CBP and some of the other folks in play, what are the factors at play in driving that? We have a data analysis audit underway looking specifically at the tracking of children during zero tolerance. We are also looking at ICE's ability to quickly and easily remove criminal aliens. It's a lot of work in the space. I think the first job that will be issued will be the data tracking work. We will follow shortly with most likely the capping report on all these inspections and perhaps some asylum seekers work this fall.
When you say this fall, when do you expect that to be?
You're going to pin me down, aren't you?
Well,
I think
broadly speaking.
I think the reports will start coming out September and roll out towards the end of the year.
That's great. Well, Mr. Morgan, as we talked about in my office on other occasions, transparency is critically important. So I would certainly hope that we have your commitment to ensure that the OIG retains access to unannounced facility visits and anything else necessary to conduct oversight, which is absolutely critical to maintaining transparency.
Absolutely, sir. And there's an old saying, I think great agencies remain great because they believe they can get better. And I believe with the OIG is one significant step in how we maintain that.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Peters.